welcome to Turn the Page, the official podcast of the Syosset Public Library.
Welcome to Turn the Page podcast. This is Jessica. I will be your librarian host today, Syosset Public Library. Don't know if I mentioned that earlier. And I am here with an author and your latest book. It's actually, so this is the third book in this particular mystery series. This is Bleeding Heart Yard. Would you like to introduce yourself and tell us about the Harbinder Kaur mysteries?
Yes, of course. So here it is. It's called Bleeding Heart Yard. I'm Elly Griffiths. And my book, Bleeding Heart Yard, is out tomorrow in the US. I don't know when this is going out, but it's out on the 15th of November. And it's the third book to feature Harbinder Kaur, but it's really because I'm very bad at standalones. So my first, I'm probably best known for writing quite a long series about an archaeologist called Dr. Ruth Galloway. And then about five years ago, I thought I'd write a standalone called Stranger Diaries. And the detective in that was Harbinder Kaur, and she sort of came in. I just knew I needed a detective, and she came in and she said something like, oh, well, let's assume I'm in charge. And I thought, oh, okay, yeah, okay. And then people seemed to like her, and I liked writing about her. So she appeared again in the Postscript Murders. And in this book, she kind of has her own mystery to solve because she's been promoted and she's moved to London. And it's the first book I've ever written set in London. So this is Bleeding Heart Yard, which is a real place in London.
It is. And so first of all, I loved her. I loved Harbinder. She was so interesting. She is she was living with her parents, still 38. She's Sikh. She's a lesbian. And she's used to people not really because a lot of white people or people who don't know much about her or just in general, they just have this preconceived notion, well, you can't drink, you're not going to drink, and you can't be gay, or you're look at you and you're a Sikh woman. And she's just I exist. And this is her first time really living on her own with roommates and kind of exploring parts of herself that she might not have felt as free to do in the past. And so we assume now, oh, you are in charge. And one of the cops that she works with gets sort of wrapped up in a murder that happened at a high school reunion. I just the pitch was pitch perfect, pun intended.
I'm so glad. Yeah, I do like books that start at a high school reunion myself. So yeah, so when this book starts, it starts with one of Harbinder's detectives saying, is it possible to forget that you've committed a murder? Those are the first lines in the book. And when she was at school, their group of students on the last day of term committed a murder. And then years later, it's 21 years later, they have their school reunion, and one of the group is found dead. And Harbinder comes in to investigate it. And it's a big high-profile case because he's in the fullness of time become a Conservative MP and sort of quite important sort of climate change denier MP. And she gets to investigate this high-profile murder. And so she's pretty glad that she's got somebody on her team who knows the school and knows the people. She doesn't know the secret, but doesn't know it yet. And there's also a link to this kind of mysterious dining club, lunch club in Bleeding Heart Yard. They meet in Bleeding Heart Yard, which, as I said, is a real place in London. And I met some of my I used to work in publishing, used to work at HarperCollins, and I always meet my old publishing friends every year. And one year we met in it's a nice restaurant in Bleeding Heart Yard, and I thought, I've got to use that in a book. And then I went to a school reunion, so I thought I've got to bring those things together.
So wait a second. So just for people who are not aware and are not on Wikipedia as we speak about this place, what is Bleeding Heart Yard?
So it's near London Bridge. And it's really, in some ways, it's slightly disappointing when you think what a great name it is, because a little courtyard, but it's a cobbled courtyard. It's very sort of oldie worldy, and there's sort of big, sort of really old factory buildings around it. There's a nice pub and there's a restaurant there. But it's mentioned in Dickens, it's mentioned in Little Dorrit. And there is a legend about the place that in the 1700s, a society beauty called Lady Elizabeth Hatton went to a ball, as you do, and met a handsome stranger, as you do, danced the night away with him. And then the next day she was found dead in Bleeding Heart Yard, and her heart rather horribly, yeah, exactly. Her heart rather horribly was cut out of her body and was apparently still pumping. And that's where the place got its name. And of course, some legends have it that it was the Spanish ambassador that she danced with and who killed her, and it was kind of hushed up under diplomatic privilege, sadly still quite a topical thing today, but of course other people say it was the devil himself who danced her away and then killed her. So I thought that legend has to come into the book, and it does come into the book. But you know, London is such an ancient city, it's a Roman city, and before then it's Tudor, and there are these kind of layers, you know, Victorian, Tudor, Roman, even below that sort of prehistoric layers. And there are some great names in London, even places like where all the banks are is called Threadneedle Street, and there's Shoulder of Mutton Lane and places like that. So I wanted to bring a few of those ancient names into it.
Yeah, there really are. I visited London before, and that was like one of my favorite things about that. Every now and then you get that in the States. Like, we actually have a Mount Misery Road near us.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Isn't that a great name? I mean, if Harbinger wants to come hang out on Long Island and check out Mount Misery Road, there's there are lots of legends about it. But, you know, but there really is something, especially if you're not from that area and you're in this ancient city, as you explained, and you're looking at places, and it's like Bleeding Heart Yard and just all of these names that are like almost like macabre. It's wonderful. Yes. But this is really cool. So like, one thing that hooked me immediately about just this group of friends, and I went to high school not in London. And by the way, private schools and public schools are kind of switched, right?
It's the British system is so ridiculous. So when we say public school, we mean the exact opposite. We mean a school that only a few people can go to, and you have to be very rich. So our version of public school is a comprehensive school, which is where anyone can go, just happens to be the local area. So that's the sort of school I went to. And this is the school in the book is a comprehensive school, but it's in quite a smart area of London. So, and there are schools like that in London. So you get people in the local sort of states, you know, very working class people, and you get like the children of pop stars and things like that. So it's a sometimes slightly uneasy mix, and that's the mix in this school.
And they went to high school in the 90s, which is when I went to high school.
Oh,
so
great.
Automatically I got really, really excited. But it's a really interesting group of people. You have, like, as you mentioned, Garfield, or Gary as they call him. That is quite a name to be strapped with, by the way, Garfield.
It is, yes. I think somebody says, why do they all have ridiculous names? So you would call yourself Gary, wouldn't you?
Yeah, I mean, please. But he is the Conservative MP, and you find out he and Henry, who were, you know, both friends in this group, they say everybody was Labour or more liberal back then. But as we know, Gary kind of switched gears and Henry went the way that he was going. So the two of them kind of have this opposition. You have Chris with a C, who changed his name to Chris with a K when he became a singer. You know, you have Anna, who's not really, she was somebody who people like, she was very attractive. She was thought of very highly, and I believe she had a relationship with Chris, but she's just kind of a regular person. And then you have Cassie, who is the cop who works under Harbinder, and you find out, as you said, like, this group committed a murder in the 90s, and now one of them was murdered, and mayhem ensues. So like, when you were kind of weaving this group together, how did you kind of know where everybody was going to fit, what everybody's story was going to be?
Well, it was a big challenge actually to put together a group like that, and of course, because it's not really, in a sense, it's not really a standalone because it's got Harbinder in, but it is, and that these are new people, so that's fun as well. Because when you write a long-running series, you know, in a way, your readers know what to expect from the character. So it was quite fun to put a character like Cassie, say, who seems, I hope, very relatable, sort of a mum, working mum with 2 children, you know, supportive husband, all that, nice dog. And she has this in her past. So it was quite fun to write about these people, and also fun to write about people. One of the things that struck me, so I did go to my old high school reunion, and nobody was murdered, and I didn't know any murderers, but it was interesting.
Are you sure?
Well, you never know. Yeah, it's true. It's true. You never know, really. But one of the things was that you wouldn't really guess where people are going to end up. Well, recently, blink and you missed it, but in the UK, we had a prime minister called Liz Truss, who was conservative, very right wing.
Right.
But at school, she'd been very left wing. Very left-wing, and even at university, and was very much for the abolition of the monarchy, for example. And, you know, I hate to say it, but as soon as she met Queen Elizabeth, she died, you know, so let's just move on there. But, you know, it's how people change. I think if you'd been at school with Liz Truss, you'd never have thought she'd be a Conservative MP. So it's how people change and how people perceive them. So at my school reunion, again, I said no murders. Well, maybe no murder, but I met this guy who'd been in my
no murders yet.
No murders yet. So this guy had been in my French class at school, and he said, oh yeah, he said, I remember you and your friend Angela, and you sat next to each other, and he said, and you always used to leave your bag so I'd fall over it, and you laughed at me. And I thought, I don't remember that. And I'm still friends with Angela, actually. And I said, well, that didn't happen, did it? She said, no, of course we'd never do that. You know, we weren't mean girls, but I think he thought we were. And actually, Angela was very good at French, and I wasn't particularly, but I kind of sat next to her. So I was probably in the aura of being good at French. And he thought that. He thought that we were the clever ones who knew everything, and we laughed at him. And of course, it wasn't true. And I hope I persuaded him of that. But I thought all these years, he's thought that. He's thought there were these 2 horrible girls in my French class, and they just laughed at me. So it's all that, it's people's perception of you and what you remember. And in the course of researching the book, I did quite a lot of research on memories, and there's been a big case study that says all that needs to happen for you to have a really acute memory of something is for somebody you trust to tell you that it happened. I mean, that's really frightening, isn't it? And people did recall these very complicated things that happened to them that actually didn't happen. Just but if enough people say, I don't know if you have siblings, but I have 2 older sisters.
I have a brother who's almost 10 years younger, so yeah.
Oh, right. So I have 2 older siblings, so it's sort of quite a big age gap. But we remember things so differently. And, you know, you can in the end become a bit convinced, can't you, that something did happen. Did it really happen? So all those things I found quite interesting to weave into it.
Yeah, it was good. And I really loved just Harbinder's character development through, you know, the other cops in, you know, that she was working with, and sort of through Cassie, and also with her roommates. You know, really, it's funny because I moved out when I was much younger than she was, but, you know, as much as I love my parents, you know, you do kind of miss out on certain development when you're still living under somebody else's roof. And sometimes that's not possible to leave. But it was really nice to sort of watch her come into her own in this particular work situation in London, and also be a roommate and possibly something else. I don't know.
Yeah.
No spoilers.
I did want to write about that. So my daughter was at university when I was writing it, and had moved quite a long way away to university, and was in a flat with four other girls, young women, I should say. And then lockdown happened, and they were kind of locked down together. And actually, they formed the most amazing bond and relationship, and it was wonderful. Really, could have been so terrible, couldn't it? They were locked down together, and in they were at university, really, it's the other end of the country, sort of in Cornwall. So it was, you know, we were a bit worried about it, but actually worked out fine. But I wanted to do that flatmate life, as you said. I did it too, shared with flatmates, and it's, you know, it can feel feel a bit lonely sometimes, but it also can be a lot of fun. And so Harbinder, as you said sort of in your intro, you know, she is from a British Sikh family, very loving family. She loves her parents. She's gay. She's kind of out to them, but not really. So this is her time to get away from them, start another life, and possibly find some romance. Again, I'm not going to do it a spoiler, but I wanted her to be open to that in this book. And, you know, also being in London, which is a much more multicultural place than where she was from. Sort of, she said that as soon as first time she saw men in turbans, she thought they were her family, because, and I have a friend from the same sort of cultural background, from Punjabi Sikh background as Harbinder, and she said that, she said as soon, you know, when she went to London, she just thought men in turbans were her family, you know. So I wanted to bring all that in and to give her a chance to strike out a bit. And she's in charge of this investigation, and she faces kind of sexism and sort of, you know, covert racism and things. But I also want Harbinder, she's quite tough, you know, she can take that really, and she is very much in charge.
So I really don't want to get too much more into just sort of the intricacies, because I think that's kind of part of a mystery, is that you need to sort of experience the relationships between the people, and also about like the murder itself that happens that Cassie forgot about. I mean, all I'm going to say is it was somebody who did something bad to, yes. And Cassie remembers that he was murdered by her and her group. They called themselves the group because why not? But it's a lot of sort of piecing things together like a puzzle, and thinking about memory in the way that you were just describing. And I think that when people read the story, they're going to really sort of go on this ride and kind of second guess themselves as to what they think they know. So I do think Bleeding Heart Yard is a good one. Are you going to be writing another Harbinger story?
I think so. I think I might do. I'd sort of thought maybe that this one, being the third one, you know, trilogy and all that, would sort of, because it's kind of got her in a different place, and she's in London. So I thought in a way it might be the last one, but I don't think I might write another one about her, maybe bring in some of the characters who are in Postscript Murders, who you just see again, excuse me, right at the end of the book. They sort of, she goes home and talks to them. So I think maybe they might be in another book. So I don't think I'm quite ready to let her go yet. And I'm still obviously writing the Ruth series. So I've got a new Ruth book out next year. So yeah, carrying on with all of them really. Might have a little pause, but we'll still carry on.
Wonderful. I am so happy. Thank you so much for chatting with us. This was lovely.
I loved it.
And we do hope that our listeners will check out Bleeding Heart Yard. When you wrote this, did you feel as if it could work as a standalone, or do you think that you know, this is something people could jump into? Should they start from the beginning?
I think it was definitely meant to be a standalone, so you can definitely jump in, and it's meant to be like that really. So it doesn't matter if you haven't read the other books, and they're not sort of a series in the way the Ruth books are a series. But if you wanted to have, the first book where Harbinder appears is The Stranger Diaries, which is a kind of modern Gothic novel, sort of set in Sussex, near where I live now, and set in a school. Again, a school, what is it with schools? But a school that was once owned by a Victorian ghost story writer. So it's that sort of book. So if you wanted to meet Harbinder for the first time, it'd be in The Stranger Diaries, and then the Postscript Murders, she goes on a kind of road trip. But absolutely, you can start afresh here at Bleeding Heart Yard, definitely.
Thank you again. I think I said that earlier, but I'm going to say it again. Check it out. And once again, this was Jessica with Syosset Libraries Turn the Page podcast. Our guest today was
Elly Griffiths, and thank you for having me. It's been lovely, and if I'm ever in the area, I'll come and visit you, because I love libraries. Used to work in one, love them.
You are welcome. And we are going to close this chapter of Turn the Page.
It's time to close this chapter of Turn the Page. Join us for the next episode.